Hi, this is Dr. Thomas, math instructor at Lawson State Community College, and in this video I will be reviewing the readiness exam, and we're going to specifically talk about operations on decimals. So on section A of the readiness exam, you will have adding and subtracting decimals, multiplying and dividing decimals, and some rounding. You should always know what to do with a decimal in each case. So for example, when you're adding and subtracting decimals, you're supposed to line up the decimal points. But when you're multiplying, you don't line up the decimal points. So you need to know all of these things. Read the directions, take your time, and check all of your answers before you turn in the exam. Now let's get started with place value. It says place value, the position of each digit in a number determines its place value. Look at this little chart over here. Notice that we have a decimal here, 67.34. So this little gold dot represents the decimal point. So notice that the 7 is in the ones place and the 6 is in the tens place, and notice that those numbers are on the left of the decimal point. But notice the difference between the place values of the numbers that go after the decimal point. So this 3 is in the tenths place and this 4 is in the hundredths place. Also notice that they put a THS on the end of these place values. So tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s. So right after the decimal point, you start with the tenths place, the hundredths place, the thousands place, and so on. So here is a sample readiness exam from spring 2011 section A, and I'm going to scroll down till we see some rounding. So let's look at rounding here. Number 9 and number 10. Number 9 says round to the nearest hundredth. So we look at this number 43.2754. Now you first need to figure out what is the hundredths place. Alright, so the number after the decimal is the tenths place, and the number after that is the hundredths place. So 7 is the hundredths place. Now what we're going to do is look at the number to the right of that 7, the hundredths place, and if that number is 5 or above, we're going to add 1 to the 7. So let me write it bigger over here. We have 43.2754. What is the hundredths place? It is the 7, because the 2 is in the tenths place, the 7 is in the hundredths place. What we're going to do is look at the number to the right of the 7. If that number is 5 or above, we're going to add a 1 to the 7. And we're going to drop the rest of the numbers. So if we add 1 to that 7, we're going to get an 8. So the answer is 43.28, and we drop the rest of the numbers. Okay, let's do number 10. It says round to the nearest tenths. So which number is in the tenths place? The number that is in the tenths place, it has a TH on it, so it's the number 1. Okay, so let me write a little bit bigger, 6.1483. Again, the 1 is in the tens place. We're going to look to the number on the right of 1. It is 4. Since that number is not 5 or above, we will keep the 1. Keep the 1. So the answer is 6.1. And we're going to drop the rest of the numbers. Alright, let's move on to adding and subtracting. So if I scroll up a little bit, let's work on numbers 6, 7, and 8. And we're going to do number 6 first. So that's 9.800 minus 3.740. Alright, subtraction problem. So first we have a 0 minus 0. That's just going to give me a 0. However, when we move on to the next position, this 0 obviously is less than this 4, so we need to borrow in this case. We're going to make that a 10, and we're going to borrow from the 8 and make it a 7. And we're going to stop borrowing because that 8 was actually bigger than the 7, so we stop. Alright, so 10 minus 4 is 6. 7 minus 7 is 0. Put your decimal here. 9 minus 3 is 6. It's important that you realize when you're adding and subtracting decimals that you always line up the decimals. So the decimal should be lined up vertically, okay? Right beneath each other, right under each other. The decimals should line up. Now, how can we check this answer? Always check by adding these two numbers together. Alright, so let's check. If we add 0, 0 is 0. 4 plus 6 is 10. Carry the 1. We get an 8 here. 6 plus 3 is 9. So we got back the same thing we started. So you need to check that before you turn in the exam. Number 7 here. We have 327.01. Very important that you line up the decimals. So if we're adding 32.982 here, then that decimal in 32.982 should fall right under the top decimal. So you'll put the 3 and the 2 here, 982. We're adding. Now nothing's above this 2, but it's considered to be a 0 here. So we'll add as usual. 0 plus 2 is 2. 1 plus 8 is 9. 0 plus 9 is 9. Decimal. 7 plus 2 is 9. 2 plus 3 is 5. And bring down the 3. Number 8. 0.77. Alright. The next number is 7.7. So I need the decimal to line up here. So that means I have to put the 7 in the front, 7 in the back here, and then 0.077. So we have 0.077. And this is adding. So we see that there are some empty spaces here. You can go ahead and add some zeros in those spaces, but for addition, it really doesn't matter. But it does matter when you are subtracting. You definitely need to put zeros when you are subtracting. So let's add the columns. 0 plus 0 plus 7. That's going to give us 7. 7 plus 0 plus 7. That's going to give us 14. Carry the 1. 7 plus 7 plus 1, that's going to give us 15 carry the 1. Don't forget to put that decimal here. 1 plus 7 here is 8. So the answer is 8.547. Alright, let's go ahead and work on some multiplication. So we have a number 11 here. And what's so nice about section A is that you will have multiple choice problems. That's just wonderful. Multiple choice problems. You have a 25% chance of getting the answer right, even if you didn't know what to do. You at least have 25% chance of getting it right, since you have four answer choices. Alright, let's work on number 11 here. Notice that the decimals are not lined up. So for multiplication, you do not have to line up the decimals. You don't supposed to line up the decimals. Actually, the last number in this first decimal should line up with the last number in the second decimal. So see how this last number 7 and the last number 3 is lined up. So that's how it's supposed to be. You're basically supposed to multiply like you normally multiply. Alright, let's try it. 0.607 times 0.03. 7 times 3 is 21. Carry your 2. 0 times 3 is 0. Add that 2. 6 times 3 is 18. Carry the 1. 0 times 3 is 0. Add that 1. Alright. Moving on. Now we're going to multiply 0 times everything up here. But when you do that, you need to shift over to the left one time. So 0 times 7 is 0. And of course, 0 times anything is just going to be 0. Alright, and then we've got to multiply 0 times everything. So that's going to be 0, 0, 0, 0. Alright. Add up everything. That's going to be 1, 2, 8, 1, 0, 0. Alright. Let me cover this 1 here. And now you're just counting the places for each decimal. So, for example, in this 0.607, there are 3 numbers after the decimal. So that's 3 decimal places. Plus, how many numbers are after the decimal here? 2 numbers. So in all, 5 decimal places. So you should have 5 numbers after your decimal in your answer. So let's start here. We're going to move 5 places to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you should have a decimal right there. Alright, so notice that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 numbers are after the decimal. So this is your answer. Dividing. Let's look at number 13 here. 3 divided by 0.06. It's important that you know that it says 3 divided by 0.06. You need to write it as 0.06 divided into 3, not the other way around. So this is 3 divided by 0.06. So that second number should come first. It's also important that you know that 3 is a whole number. Since 3 is a whole number, 3 equals 3.0, which also equals 3.00, which also equals to 3.000. So you should see the pattern here. All of these numbers actually mean the same thing. Alright? So if I put a 0.0 here, it does not affect the value of 3 because it means the same thing. However, before we start this problem, we have to make this number to the left, call it the divisor, we have to make it a whole number. Right now we have 0.06 or 0.06. We have to move this decimal 2 places to the right in order to make it a whole number. Now because we moved it 2 places to the right here, we have to move the decimal in the dividend 2 places to the right. So notice what happens if you move it 2 places to the right. You have an empty space here, so that's where you need to add a 0. Okay, so now what you really have is 6 divided into 300. So 6 goes into 30 5 times, that gives us 30. Then you bring down a 0, 6 goes into 0 0 times, no remainder. So the answer is 50. So the answer is A. Now how could you check to make sure that was correct? Alright, so we said that 0.06 divided into 3 was 50. Now you can always multiply this number times this number to see if you get 3. Let's try it. Okay, let's see if 0.06 times 50 is really 3. So 6 times 0, 0, 0, 0. 6 times 5 is 30. Carry 3. 0 times 5 is 0. But you add that 3, get 3 here, get a 0. And then we're going to add our column 0, 0, 3, 0. Where should we put our decimal? We have 2 decimal places here. 2 decimal places. So we should move our decimals 2 places to the left. So yes, it is 3 because 3 equals 3.0, which equals 3.00, which equals 3.000, which equals to, you get my point. It's 44.5 divided by 8.9. So again, what number goes first once you start calculating? Since it's divided by 8.9, we're going to do 8.9 first, divided into 44.5. So notice that 8.9 is not a whole number now. We have to move the decimal point so that it is a whole number. How many times will we have to move? We have to move it once to make it 89. So because we moved it once in the divisor, we have to move it once in the dividend. Alright? So it's important that you know that the decimal will go right above the decimal in the dividend. So this is the quotient up here. That decimal will go right above the decimal here. Okay? Alright, 89. How many times does it go into 445? Alright, so you need to do a calculation off to the side. 89 times 8 times what will give us that 44? 6 would be too much. Let's try 5. So that's 45. Carry the 4. There you go. 5 times. Which is 445. So you subtract, you're going to get a 0. So you have 5 points. So this is the same thing as 5, which is the same thing as 5.0, which is the same thing as 5.00, which is the same thing as 5.000. All of these numbers are equivalent to each other. So what is the answer here? The answer is D. How can you check to make sure? You can multiply this 5 times 8.9, the original divisor, to see if you get 44.5, the original dividend. Alright, that concludes this session on operations on decimals. I hope that it helps.